Hey guys, welcome to Titanium Tuesdays on Propelio TV. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with my good friend, short sale expert,
Hi,
host of the Boss Babes podcast, and best-selling author, Short Sales Uncensored.
I'm sure in the short sale category, I am definitely the best-selling author.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving week. I'm excited to be back. It was kind of weird last Tuesday, not being on the set, spewing some good content. So excited to talk to you today about short sales and how that kind of impacts the real estate investing world and some of your case studies, some of your crazy short sales. Before we get too far in this, why don't you take a minute to explain to people short sales and why they're a good option when you should actually go down the path of a short sale.
From an investor standpoint or for just in general?
Yeah, let's go from the investor. I think the majority of our audience is going to be an investor, and you know, we've talked on the show here multiple times about how we should be solving the seller's problems.
Absolutely.
And I think this is definitely a strategy that you can use to solve a seller's problems.
Absolutely. So again, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I think when we talk about short sales, especially as an investor, I love what you guys say about solving problems and being solution oriented, because I'm all about let's educate. I'm sure as an investor, you know that the best kind of deals that you've done are the ones that you've been able to build rapport and really not sell the homeowner, but really make them understand why this is their best option. And that's a lot of the conversations that I have. As an investor, when you are looking at all your options, and obviously you're going to be looking for equity, right? Because that's what you guys are trying to do. But when you come across a property that has no equity, instead of walking away, a short sale is a fantastic option, not only for the homeowner to help them so that they can avoid foreclosure, but also for the investor, because it gives them an opportunity to be able to purchase the property instead of walking away at a discount. And so when you're identifying these properties and you're saying, okay, well, you know, for example, they owe $200,000 and you can only do 100. Well, the numbers are so far apart, there's no way you can make it work. You know, that's generally when they invite me in on the conversation and say, hey, look, you know, I still want to buy the property, but I'm not going to be able to do it just outright because of what you owe, because of, you know, foreclosure, you know, the fees, the loan modification, whatever they did to get themselves in that situation.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you and I first met, it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You called me out of the blue and you're like, hey, I want to take you to lunch and I want to explain how you can utilize short sales in your business.
Yep.
And at the time, just being completely ignorant, I was a newer investor, mainly just focusing on wholesaling.
Yeah.
I viewed short sales as like a very negative experience. I viewed
it usually is.
Right. I mean, those are the ones that takes forever, and then there's this firm closing date that comes out of the blue, and it's like, no, you have to close tomorrow or we have to start all over, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But what you explained to me is that before the short sale process starts, you can actually go in and utilize that process to get it at the price point that you need it, even though the equity might not be there.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing for investors to understand is this is another tool in your tool belt.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I say. Look, you're already taking the words out of my mouth. I tell them, I'm like, use me as a tool.
Right.
You know, as a resource, because especially when you're talking to these homeowners and they're not understanding, you know, well, because a lot of them think they have equity.
Yep.
Because how many times have you gone to an appointment and they're like, oh, I only owe $200,000 based on their unpaid principal.
Right.
And then the actual payoff comes back and it's like $280,000.
Okay, so for the people that haven't gone through this before, explain how that makes sense. They paid it down. The unpaid principal is $200,000. Why would they now owe $280,000? So
a couple of different reasons. It all depends on what they've done with the loan, right? So the actual, and I always say this, no matter whether you're identifying it as a short sale or not, always, always, always get a payoff statement. Okay, so if you're a new investor and you're going to a house that someone's behind, do not take their word for it. And even their actual mortgage statement will not reflect what they actually owe if they're behind. So
okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. You're sitting down, you're with the motivated seller, they say, hey, I only owe $200,000. Here's my statement that shows unpaid principal balance, $200,000. how are you now going to get a payoff? Can you do it right then and there?
Absolutely. They have their loan number and the phone number, so even if you don't know the numbers of the lenders, on that actual statement, it'll have all the information. You can actually have the homeowner call right then and there. And if they're too far behind, because I've seen times where it's been 3, 4, 5 years,
right.
I think the most I've ever seen is 10 years, which at that point they're like experts
right.
at getting their foreclosure stopped. But they'll have to have an attorney be the one to actually issue the payoff.
And is that something pretty typical that they're going to be able to give it even if they are, say, a year behind? Mm-hmm. They have that already calculated right then and there?
Absolutely. They should be able to give you a verbal payoff, and if not, they're going to be able to tell you like, hey, well, in a couple days or whatever, and you wait for that payoff. I cannot tell you how many times at closing, realtors or investors, they get to closing and they say, hey, Nicole, I need your help. We showed up to closing today and the payoff is $75,000 more, mm-hmm. Which is crazy to me that you would show up to closing, but that's a whole other story.
Right. So let's say in this situation that they say 200, it's actually 280. Mm-hmm. Let's just use an example. The house is worth 300, using round numbers. So now as an investor, you're looking at this, there's not enough spread there to make anything happen.
Right.
How, as an investor, do I sit there and explain what a short sale is and how, just using, for me, for example, I use you. So I now explain, I'm going to bring someone like Nicole in.
Right.
What's the best way to explain that to the seller?
Well, you basically explain to the seller, hey, look, if we bought it this way, this is how much you would owe.
Right.
But instead of actually coming to closing with money, there's an option that we could have someone come in and negotiate with your lender so that you owe nothing. And that's the best way to do it, because since they are motivated, they want to get out from under it, and they're not going to want to pay $60,000, $80,000, or honestly, they can't afford it, right? That's why they're in the situation they are in.
What impact does a short sale have on the seller's credit or ability to buy another house?
So that's like, in the book that I wrote, we talk about 3 motivating factors, and it's credit, money, or time. And so that question does come up all the time. And as far as the credit on what's being impacted, it's the missed payments.
Gotcha.
So the missed payments are what's affecting their credit. Now, when you do this,
it's already been done.
It's already been done.
Damage has already been
so
done.
that's also why you don't want it to drag on, because every month it's affecting their credit. Once the short sale is completed and a successful short sale, meaning that the person that's negotiating has actually gotten the bank to forgive that debt, it'll show as a paid debt on their mortgage.
Gotcha.
So it actually improves their credit, and depending, since credit is a revolving factor, so they have to be okay on their other items, they can actually get an FHA mortgage in 2 years.
Gotcha.
From doing a short sale.
So guys, we're about to jump into one of Nicole's case studies, but we want you to drop any questions, especially specifically about short sales for Nicole. We'll kind of interrupt the case study to answer any questions that you have, any current issues that you might have going on with certain deals.
Yeah.
I know last night when this was posted that there was the very first comment on here was a gentleman saying that he had a couple of questions. Is there any way that we could throw those up there? Because I'd love to jump in and answer this gentleman's questions that he had about an actual short sale, or I guess it was
something they tried to do.
Yeah, they tried to do, and it didn't turn out. He said he had a contract with the bank on a short sale. Long story short, pun not intended, the bank did not notify us, and they foreclosed on the property and then sold it at auction while we had it under contract. His questions are, is there a certain time frame we should consider when doing a short sale to avoid this, and what are the chances of taking this to court and winning?
So first of all, that is a great question, because a lot of times people don't understand that there are ways to avoid it. I would have immediately, if it already got foreclosed on, that means you guys weren't aware that there was a foreclosure date. So whenever you are under contract, even as an investor, because not everybody knows what they're doing, right? Even realtors, is find out if there is a set date.
Right.
And if there is, you need to work on, before anything else, getting it postponed. Because this happens a lot, where people think that even if they're negotiating with the lender, that the bank won't foreclose, which is not the truth.
So let me ask you this, because with dealing with motivated sellers, sometimes they're not forthcoming with all of this information.
Yeah.
They're in a bad situation, and sometimes it's coming from a place of ignorance, right? Like they think, if I don't tell you how bad the situation is, maybe you'll come in here and solve all my problems and it can go away.
It's ignorance and denial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in situations that you've dealt with trying to get all of this information, is the foreclosure date something that is commonly withheld?
It is, but here's the thing. You have to ask the right questions.
Right.
I mean, honestly, that's the key to anything in real estate, right? You have to know what to ask in order to facilitate the deal. Like, you have to be driving the bus
Right.
in the transaction as the investor, as the realtor. I mean, if you're not, then you leave it to the unknown.
Is there a way that as an investor or a realtor, you can find out a foreclosure date without them telling you?
Absolutely. So if you actually pull up the tax rolls in Netris, that's a great start. As soon as I get a referral, I'll look up the tax rolls, and it'll stay at the top if a yellow auction, or it'll show pre-foreclosure. Now, that's not always 100% guaranteed because it's coming from the county, but you can also scroll down and you can see when the substitute trustee was filed.
How long does it take before it becomes a pre-foreclosure, like you're saying on tax rolls? Is that immediate, like as soon as they're 30 days late?
No. So the bank, it honestly depends on the bank. So in Texas, it only takes about 3 to 4 months for them to file it, but the bank could hold off if the seller is trying to work something out. But as soon as the substitute trustee is filed, that's when the foreclosure process actually starts. And so it'll be in pre-foreclosure. But again, it's not 100% accurate because people can do anything that they can, just like the auction when you buy the list every month.
Right.
It can get postponed and things like that, but it's a great indicator and it's a good start to know at least if someone's in foreclosure.
Gotcha. We got a question from Sonia Ray. She says, what kind of licensing do you need to do short sales, and how long does a usual short sale take?
So you have to have a real estate license to do a short sale, because in order to get a short sale approved with the bank, you have to have a listing agreement. So you're actually retaining them as a client. How long does it take? That is a great question. It's probably the most common question, sellers, buyers, everybody. It takes as long as you are facilitating the process. I mean, there's no like general time frame. Now, for us, our average time frame is 2 to 3 months from start to finish. And that's, when we first get the listing until us closing, negotiating. But every short sale is different. And so it really is 100% the person that's actually processing it, because they're the ones that are directly communicating with the bank, and they're going to, they really are the difference on whether it's successful or not, because they're the ones that have the entire picture. They're the only ones that are directly communicating with them on whether it's going to get approved or not.
Right. What percentage of short sales that you facilitate do you think are investment properties compared to something that there's just not a whole lot of equity and they're behind and it can just be a retail listing?
So about 75% of the properties that we do are that are short sales are investment properties. The other 25% are retail properties that are just beautiful, but the homeowner just got into bad situations. If the property is distressed, it's going to be sold to an investor for a profit. And the reason why is because if there's any structural issues, it's going to disqualify a retail buyer from being able to purchase it. So it's all in the negotiations with the bank. And like the last deal that we did, I mean, we had to go, to bat with the bank to show them, look, the roof needs to be completely replaced. The structural issues are the reason why. So at the end of the day, to the bank, they're only going to get what it's worth anyway, right? At the end of the day, an investor is the only one that's going to be willing to buy a house like that's heavily distressed. So that's what we use in our negotiations with the bank.
And I think it's very important for people to understand that you need to have somebody on your team that understands how to facilitate short sale transactions.
Right.
Everybody knows my partner, Cassie, is licensed and she's an agent, but we don't use her on our short sales. We use Nicole because she specializes in this, and this is something that you need somebody that specializes in short sales. When you come across something, going back to our example, 280 is what they owe on it now and it's worth 300. As an investor, if I go in and I say, okay, based off of this, the most I can pay is 180. That's where you come in and you're going to show that. Is it the appraiser that you show the damages to, or how do you negotiate with the bank on getting that price down?
So it's kind of like layers, like peeling back an onion, right? So we try to be proactive and we start with the appraiser. right? So we show them, I work with you in the very beginning and I'm like, hey, show me the repair bids, show me all, we work together on presenting a case to the appraiser. Now, some appraisers are still stupid. You said I could say that.
Yeah, we could say that.
And they're still like in denial of,
Right.
but we still try to be as proactive. So my little tagline is be proactive instead of reactive. So we try to do all of that in the front end. If that doesn't work, then we go to bat with the bank and we explain to them.
Real quick, on the appraisal, do you show up at the
Yes.
appraisal and you're literally showing them like, see,
Yeah.
the roof has to be replaced?
Honestly, I think people try to overcomplicate it, but I just try to be very like, this is common sense. Like, appraiser, would you buy this house?
Right.
Like, hey, by the way, whatever you say to the bank is what I have to sell it at. And so we try to explain it to them that way, and then we just go over all of the repairs. Like, okay, do you see that? That's part of the cracks in the foundation. Do you see that? This is what we have to do with this.
So do they send different appraisers out for short sales compared to just a regular?
Yeah, they do. I mean, and it's either an appraisal or a BPO. And a BPO is a broker price
Right.
opinion from an agent. So they're cheaper.
Which
when
do
it's
you
done.
prefer?
Sometimes I prefer the BPO because they're a lot easier to dispute if it's just an agent that has no clue.
And who makes that determination? The bank?
The bank. So that because the difference is a BPO is $50.
Right.
And an appraisal, even though it's cheaper through the short sale, it's still $200-300. So it depends
Gotcha.
on the investment. If it's an FHA loan, they have to do an appraisal.
So we got a question. How do short sales differ across the country, or is it essentially the same?
It's essentially the same. What you need to understand about short sales is that every lender has different guidelines. So if you're working a Wells Fargo FHA, it's going to be completely different from a Wells Fargo conventional. And so I've done short sales in Los Angeles, I've done them in Arkansas, I've got actually a couple in Arkansas right now. I mean, you can process it anywhere. You do still have to have an agent involved,
Right.
But we can do it anywhere.
So let's talk about that real quick, because we might have agents from across the country watching right now that would be like,
Yeah.
hey, I'd love to have, how does that work with an agent, say in Arkansas, that wants to partner with you because they don't understand how short sales work and they want your expertise? How does it, is that just something like a referral agreement or something like that?
Basically, and so we do the processing and then we pay them a referral, and so they do the licensed agent part. And it's great for the agent because if they're doing traditional, they can still have the listing
Right.
when it's not in Texas, but that's basically how that works. We take care of all the processing with the bank.
Okay, so we got a question coming in from Mr. Matt Smith. He says, I always thought you could only get a deal in a short sale if they had a second lien. How do you negotiate if they only have a first lien?
It's actually the opposite, Matt. If they have more liens, it's actually a lot more complicated because the first lien has to pay out all of the subordinate liens. So the second lien, HOA, taxes, things like that. So it's the good deal, on however you want to phrase that, is actually in the negotiations on the as-is value.
Right. And when there's multiple liens, that also strings out the process, right?
It does. I mean, if anything, second liens complicate a lot if they're not with the same lender. So if they did like an 80-20 and both of them were with Chase, but then the second got charged off to, a collection agency, that's where short sales can
Right.
get complicated.
And when you're going through, there's multiple lien holders.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get approval from both,
Yep.
and hopefully in the same time frame, where, because when you get approval from one lien holder, they give you a date that's good to, right?
Yep.
And then you're hoping that, so that's probably what kind of, that's from my experience when we've had multiple lien holders. It's like,
Right.
first lien holder says, okay, we're good, we can close by the end of the month, and then the second lien holder magically tells you they're good on the first of the next month, and it's like,
Right.
oh, we're back to starting
It's
all over.
definitely like a very, it's very time sensitive, like you're saying, because
Yeah.
you work so hard to get that approval, and then you have to go to bat and do it all over again with the second. Now you do have leverage with the second because at the end of the day, the second's going to get zero if the first forecloses.
Right.
But you have a lot of those, like we have a lot of things that we have to do, and we have to be creative with the second lien holders because some of them are just very unrealistic. They're like,
Right.
we are owed $45,000. We want $20,000. Like, no, the most the banks are usually going to allow is $8,500 for
Right.
the second lien holder. So it's definitely a lot of going back and forth.
So you said like 75% of your deals that you're doing right now are investment properties. Is this investors that are bringing you leads that they have and they're like, hey, Nicole, there's not enough equity here, I need your help?
Yeah.
Or is this sellers coming to you? Like, how are you generating those leads on these short sales?
So I've been doing this for about 8 years, so I've been around for a while. 100% of the business I get in is referrals from either investors, like you're saying, that come across these no equity deals, or realtors that are like, I don't know how to do this, I don't want to do this.
How often on the referrals from investors are you able to get it down to the price that the investor needs where they can purchase it, compared to, hey, we're not going to get it down to where you need it, but we can just list it on the MLS and help the seller?
We sell a lot off market, so I can confidently say the majority of them. I mean, it's a very small percentage. The only time that it's very difficult if an investor refers it over is if it's a retail deal.
Right.
And we still try to negotiate their offer, but if you refer somebody, like for example, a lot of the referrals that I'm getting right now are new builds.
Right.
So they're 2016, 2017, and there's just no justification to get a discount on those.
So if you weren't paying attention, 75% of her deals are investment properties, and majority of the time, she's able to get it at the price that the investor needs it at. Just pay attention to that if you weren't paying attention.
Like, listen up.
So Scott Carson says, are most of the short sales with the big banks?
Yes, they are. There are, lately I'm seeing a lot, generally they come in waves, like in trends. Right now we're seeing a lot of Aquin and SBS, which is specialized portfolio services. But most of them will, because what happens when you first get a loan, it gets sold off and it keeps constantly getting service released. So a lot of them are with the big banks.
So first of all, I'm going to cheese out for a second because Scott Carson's watching us. And I mean, that's pretty
Hi,
awesome.
Scott.
Yeah, I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, that dude is like a genius when it comes to notes and all the free information that he shoots out. So that's awesome that he's watching us. Thanks for joining us. Looks like we got a couple other friends. We got Jamie and Corey Thompson, fellow Propelio TV hosts. And
I saw Jamie. Hi, Jamie.
Megan and Nicole and Melody and all kinds of people. Elizabeth, your BFF. Also been a guest on here. Great content. So getting back to short sales, on situations where I sit down on a newer build, 2016, 2017, and the seller's behind a couple months on payments and they're in a situation where they're motivated. At what point in time should I look to you compared to trying to go down the subject to route?
So I always say, like, you guys are going to work your numbers, right? So you're going to figure out like if this is a better route somewhere else. But a lot of times the subject to doesn't work because they're so upside down, especially if it's a new build, and they barely put anything down. Because a lot of what we're seeing right now are the LGI homes.
Okay.
That people were buying and they were at 100% financing. And so it just doesn't
Actually, it's not even 100% financing.
It's like 110.
On some of those, it is 110.
Yeah.
I mean, because what they're doing on some of these is they're financing the actual down payment on it and slapping that on as a second lien, where they don't even know it exists.
They never do.
I've run into this where it's like they don't even know that there is an $8,000 to $10,000 note in second lien position that they eventually owe.
I think that's a really good thing to bring up when you talk about second liens, because the one thing that I come across a lot that people don't know about is HUD liens.
Right.
So if you come across the HUD liens, so a lot of people don't know that when they do a loan modification on an FHA mortgage, that instead of fixing the existing lien, which is the loan that they're currently paying on, they take all of those missed payments and the fees and everything, and they create a second lien.
See, I know, this is what I'm saying. Scott Carson is a smart man. Are you seeing a lot of second liens on your new builds, or are they primarily just first liens that were 100% financed? I mean, yeah, that's what we're talking about. And I'm coming from experience on this, where we've had, we do a lot of marketing in specific neighborhoods in Fort Worth that are newer builds. And what we're looking for is people that are financially distressed, but not necessarily the property is physically distressed.
So what are you doing with them? Are you
subject to and
subject
turning
to?
them around into either owner finance or rentals,
That makes
depending
sense.
on which ones.
Yeah.
And what we've run into is properties worth 205
Yeah.
and they owe 190 on the first lien, but then they have 10,000 or 15,000 on a second lien that they didn't even know existed. So yeah, it is happening, Scott. Brittany Washington, she wants to know your accolades. How many foreclosures have you stopped?
Like a month? That's a really hard question, Brittany. Hi, by the way. It's generally the most referrals I get are within 2 weeks of the foreclosure sale date, so which is the first Tuesday of every month, which of course everybody knows. And we average about 10 to 15 a month that we're stopping. So
good.
somebody do your fancy math, and you can make that up to a year.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But it's a lot of, we have a lot of creative ways that we can stop, like by diving into the type of loan, the history of it. I mean, we get the full history, and the quickest we've been able to stop it is 2 days before the sale date. Now, I'm not saying that, like PSA, I'm not saying that to refer it to me 2 days before, even though we will take them, because, if you know that it's in foreclosure, bring me in on the conversation in the beginning so we can be proactive. Don't bring me in after you've tried everything and then say, hey, now try your magic, because I get that a lot.
So we're gonna jump to a quick break here, go to commercial, and like Nicole said, if you have a short sale and she can close it in 48 hours, she's a miracle worker, so bring anything and everything to her. But keep the questions coming, loving the conversation, and we'll be right back after these messages. Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. We've had a great conversation so far about short sales, and I know on the surface, short sales might not seem like the sexiest topic.
It's not.
But
I try really hard though.
But you do. You try very hard.
Sexy it
but today we do have a couple of giveaways. Nicole has been kind enough to bring a couple of her books that we're going to give away. We have to come up with some kind of trivia question.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you think about that. We're going to come up with some trivia questions. Looks like we got 3 books to give away. And real quick, guys, something close and dear to my heart and everybody on my team. Today is Giving Tuesday. Facebook and PayPal have done an amazing thing today where they have matched up to $7 million in donations or fundraisers on Facebook. And we have a fundraiser going on for our local nonprofit Beat Kids Cancer. We use these funds to help families that are currently undergoing treatment. We fund unpaid bills, be it mortgage, electricity, car payments. We've even paid tax liens on properties. Just today, we paid 2 mortgage payments for people that are undergoing treatment here in Fort Worth, Texas. And so it doesn't matter how small of an amount. You don't even have to give out funds to us. If you just share my post, go to my personal page. I'm tagged on the title here on the Facebook page. Go to my page, share the post. It's very much appreciated. I didn't even anticipate a whole lot of giving today, and we received over $500. So thank you everybody that has given to us. Looks like they're having a little bit of problem with our website, but it's beatkidscancertexas.com, and I'll make sure to go in there and tag the Facebook page as well. That being said, we also want to give back with these books. So did you come up with a good trivia question?
Okay, so I think I was trying to think of like common questions I get asked, like what's the difference between a short sale and a foreclosure? I think that's a good one.
Okay, so what is best answer or?
Yeah, best answer.
Best answer.
Sure.
Best answer. What's the difference between a short sale and a foreclosure?
Yeah.
There you go. So we'll give the best answer in one of them. So we still got 2 more.
Can we just talk about Scott's comment? That
Yes. Let's go.
Nicole's bringing sexy back. Cue Justin Timberlake. Sorry, I was trying not to laugh while you were talking serious about the donation.
I'm over here talking about kids with cancer.
I know, and I'm just dying here laughing.
Looks like we do have a question here with Mark Boyd.
Okay.
He said, I'm working on a pre-foreclosure as we speak. The foreclosure process is going to start the auction on the 4th of December. The seller owes $179,000. That's a payoff reinstatement is $9,700. It's a fourplex built in 2008, bringing in approximately $2,600. Principal, taxes, insurance, $1,785.
Okay, so Mark, how much do they owe though? How much is the house worth? Because you said they owe $179,000. What would your offer be? Because the only way to determine if that would actually be a short sale is if they owe significantly more than what the actual house is worth.
See, this is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier. Like, as an investor, to me, that's not a short sale.
Right.
Unless the property is physically
We need to know what the ARV
destroyed.
is.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a fourplex, so I'm looking at it saying you could be all in at $190 and you're getting $2,600 a month. I mean, depending on what market you're in, those are fairly decent numbers.
Absolutely.
Unless you're like in the Midwest, up in Ohio, Indiana, Missouri. I mean, if this is a Texas deal, those are pretty decent numbers.
This is a Texas deal. Talk to RJ. He'll get in on it.
Yeah, I mean, those are good numbers. So personally on that, you would either just do a cash offer and you got to close on the 3rd of December before, or offer subject to. On something like that, I would definitely offer subject to. You catch up to $9,700 and then.
Well, I was just going to say that sometimes it's worth reinstating.
Right.
And if you can, do that creatively, and I'm not the expert at that, so I'm not even going to. But that's definitely a solution. Mark, the biggest thing that you want to do is just figure out what the ARV is, and then how much you're willing to offer and what they owe, and that's the best way to determine whether they're upside down or not.
Yeah, another thing is on situations like this where they owe, or the reinstatement amount is $9,700. Mm-hmm. They might not necessarily want to just get out from underneath it.
Right.
They might need a little bit of cash in their pocket. So you might be able to say, okay, I'll catch up the $9,700 and I'll give you $2,000 to go find a new place or whatever it is. Looks
Absolutely.
like Scott had a good comment about how long the short sale sticks on your credit. It's for 24 months. A foreclosure stays on your credit for 7 years.
Well, the short sale, it's not that it sticks on your credit for 24 months, but it shows that it's paid and you can purchase a house in a couple years. A foreclosure is going to be devastating to the credit because it's 7 to 10 years from when they actually file it. So a lot of times it can actually drag on longer than that because it takes the lenders, I've seen up to a year to even file the foreclosure.
Okay, so Brittany apparently wants to win your book because she's the only one I've seen so far that gave us an answer. Short sale stops the foreclosure and accepts a lesser payoff amount for what is owed than what is due.
That's a good answer.
Okay, so we're going to put that on, that's an answer. We got John George Alvarez. A short sale stays on your credit for 2 years. Foreclosure stays on your credit 7 years, or short sale lets you apply for FHA loan with 2 years.
I guess I was more specific with my question. I was more saying what's the difference between a short sale and a foreclosure? So should I just say it?
Yeah, let's just do it.
Okay, we'll give you guys, for the ones that answer, we'll just give them the book.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
John George Alvarez, Brittany Washington, and Scott Carson. There you go.
Done.
Book
Scott,
winners.
just because you're the most participating and RJ really likes you.
Yeah.
So there you go. So a short sale is where a homeowner is still the seller, and even though the bank is involved, the bank is the one that's taking the loss. A foreclosure is where the bank has already foreclosed on the homeowner, so they are now the seller. So that's the difference, because it's very confused because the bank is involved in both transactions, but they're only the owner when it's a foreclosure.
So John, yes, there is an email to contact Nicole. We'll make sure to put those in the comments because I definitely think there's going to be a bunch of people reaching out to Nicole about this. The other thing is Mark, going back to his thing, he says CMA is coming back at 2:30 on that deal, and the owner wants out. Buddy, I'm just telling you right now, if the owner wants out, offer subject to, reinstate the loan at $9,700, ride that out.
And if you don't want to do that, then contact RJ. And
if not, you can call me. Jamie has a question on there.
Sure.
What is the difference between short sale and foreclosure? Oh, okay, she's just trying to win a book.
Oh, okay.
Jamie, you don't win the book.
Sorry,
Too late.
Jamie. Actually, though, Jamie was probably the most detailed answer, but
She
sorry.
was. She gave a really good answer.
She did. Good job.
You're too late. She tried too hard. So, anyways, guys, keep coming with the questions because we're loving the questions and the opportunities to help you guys out with deals that y'all are currently going through.
Absolutely.
I'm going to follow up with Mark Boyd to make sure he does a sub 2 on the deal. Mark, if you don't know how to do a sub 2, reach out to me or even people that are much more versed in that, like Mr. Tang Nguyen. Shout out to Tang Nguyen, best hair in real estate. He needs to come on the show at some point in time. But he's a sub 2 master, and I think that is definitely, just based off of what you told me there, those are the best options for that.
For sure.
Sonia has another question. She says, do you have to be behind on the mortgage in order to qualify for the short sale?
So that's a great question because we've had some clients that are about to be behind. If it's an FHA mortgage, you have to at least be 60 days behind for them to approve it.
Okay.
You can start the process, but they won't actually issue the approval until they show that you're behind. It doesn't make sense because you're kind of like, okay, wouldn't they want to accept money throughout the process? But being behind shows that you have some type of financial hardship. And so that's why, to them, the bank's saying, okay, well, if you're still paying, I'm not going to take a loss because keep giving me my payment. Does that make sense?
Yep. So Scott Carson, in the spirit of Giving Tuesday, gave his book to Jamie Woolley. So there you go. Jamie, you get the book.
I'm going to sign them too, guys. So give us your address. We'll send it out to you.
Really? You sign books?
I sign it.
You sign books for people that invite you on their TV show?
I signed your book. You get to my book signing. Didn't I? Yes.
It is signed?
See, Cassie just called you out.
My bad.
It's signed.
I gave you a hard time. And you signed my book. Feel bad about that. So anyways, Jeremy Dimmer says, have you been seeing an increase in short sales in the last year?
Absolutely. As the market starts to, and I think I did kind of talk about this a couple weeks ago, that to realtors, that as the market starts to shift, people are not able to sell as quick. And so what happens, prices are reduced, and the people that are in foreclosure, they don't have the time frame or the luxury of keeping the house on the market, for 2-3 months in order to sell it.
Are you seeing an increase in expired listings?
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Okay. So
that are turning into short sales.
Right, exactly. I bring this up because we've actually seen deals, and Elijah De La Garza just joined. He'll love this because this is a specific deal that we did together, where the property was listed on the MLS, and the retail agent told them, your house is going to sell, it's going to sell for X amount of dollars, and it's going to fly off the market in a neighborhood that is notorious for long days on market.
Yeah.
And it didn't sell, and because of the fairy tale that was told to the seller, in their mind, they determined we don't have to make payments on our mortgage anymore because it's going to sell. I mean, they told me it's going to sell in 2 weeks, and so I don't have to make any more payments.
Yeah.
And then it went 6 months, and there were no payments made, and so then when the listing expired, they come running to us where it's, hey, I'm in a bad spot. Like, my house won't sell.
Now I'm behind.
And now I stopped making payments.
Yeah.
And owned the house for a very long time. So it's like, well, what happened? Why did you stop making payments? And it was just based off the realtor telling them.
So the biggest thing right now that we're seeing is just readjusting seller expectations, because I think, to your point, that most realtors, they came into the business in the last couple of years, so they're coming off this high that houses are flying off because there wasn't much effort that had to be had, and now it's like, oh, by the way, not only is your house going to be on the market a couple more months, but now you have to do this, this, and this just to stick out.
Right.
So a lot of houses are definitely expiring because those realtors have never been in a market where they had to actually make an effort to sell them.
Absolutely, and I think that's the case for everybody. Like right now, even as investors, this is a time where you need to be
very conservative.
Right, prepare yourself for things that you might not have ever experienced before, because there is some change going on in the market, a correction of sorts, and longer days on market. But there's also opportunities that are opening up with the expired listings, and also with people falling behind on payments, and like you said, an increase in short sales.
And as an investor, I mean, you really can capitalize on this because, I mean, you've been in the business long enough too to go through that wave where a lot of investors that I was working with, like when I had called you, had gone out of the business because they were in that foreclosure market and they didn't know how to survive in a market that was good. They didn't know how to be creative.
Right. Is there a resource out there to see the amount of short sales that have taken place in a specific market?
The only record of that would be MLS because they track it, but the best way to determine on as far as people that could possibly be a short sale is to look at the pre-foreclosures. So I always look at the list, like, 3,000 in Tarrant County, 1,000 here, and that will give me a good indication of what areas are more prone to short sales.
Right.
But the only actual database would be MLS, and you can search it through a filter that whether it was a short sale or not.
Where does it notate that it's a short sale? I've always noticed
there's you can add, you can add features like search features.
Yeah.
It says short sale, and it says yes or no.
There you go. See, you learn something new every day. So anyways, guys, love to get some more questions in for Nicole about short sales. Do you have any specific short sales that you want to kind of showcase today, or
the case study?
Yeah.
Do we have time for that?
Yeah, we have a little bit of time. How are we doing on time, Mr. Harper?
We're good. He gave us a thumbs up.
Wow.
So I came
enthusiastic today.
So I came prepared with 2 case studies. So I'll read this one. So we had a short sale in 2017 in Arlington, and we literally were told by the bank, it was SBS, that the investor did not participate in short sales. It was actually referred to us because the realtor had it for 8 months. Okay. And they had no idea. They were just like, we keep submitting the paperwork, and it's not going anywhere. When we got down to it, they were like, we don't do short sales. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not a thing. So let's figure this out. So after weeks and weeks of going back and forth, we got the investor's information, and it was like some trust. It was like the one with 6 different names on it. And I was like, okay. Because they're like, well, if you don't like the answer, go to the investor. So I spent a week researching the investor. I found 6 different addresses and sent out certified letters to every single one. And I sent a letter out every day for a week. So I finally got a response, which was crazy because I kind of told the investor and the seller, I was like, look, I'm just gonna do a Hail Mary because you've already tried this for a couple years basically, because the homeowner tried working out with the bank themselves, and they basically told them, we're not doing any retention options, which means we're not going to do a loan modification, we're not going to do a short sale, we're foreclosing. Which is not normal because most lenders, short sales are established enough that they know the process, or they have a process. So we sent out the letter, we got a response back. It was from Wells Fargo, which was weird. And they basically told us that they're willing to do something.
Right.
And so we sent in the letter, and within 2 weeks, we were able to get the investor's offer approved. They already had a evaluation, we presented a whole case, and they just gave us the approval.
So what is the lender's obligation to listening to the short sale? And is it really kind of a sales process where you're almost trying to convince them that this is the better route than foreclosure?
Pretty much. So it's your job as the person that's doing the short sale to show them why this is better for them to take a loss through a short sale than to actually spend the money to foreclose.
Right.
Because if they weigh that option and they say, okay, well, I can get more through a foreclosure than they think, then they'll foreclose.
So how often do you try to stop the foreclosure with a short sale and they just tell you, go away, we're going to foreclose?
Not very often. Not very often in the sense that we can't do it because as long as we get all that information up front, so we know what we're fighting for. And so kind of what you said earlier about when you're talking about the charity, about people going through cancer, a lot of our clients have legitimate hardships.
Right.
People pass away, cancer, excessive debt. They've been put in this situation, and so a lot of it is us, the way we paint the picture to the bank of look, this person cannot afford this, and we're giving you an offer that is a legitimate offer that we can close. And at the end of the day, they're going to always save money through a short sale than having to hire an attorney, take the house back. The bank's not in real estate. The bank doesn't want to go through all of that.
Right.
So it's our job to show them why it's better.
Scott Carson said he had one short sale that took 48 months. Scott, I'm well on my way to...
We were just talking about that earlier.
I'm well on my way in one in Hawaii to matching those 48 months. I made the grave mistake of when we finally got everybody's approval so we thought.
By posting it.
By posting it on Facebook.
Don't ever post it on social media until the deal is done. It is closed and funded.
The day I posted, we've had the property under contract for 790 days. Was the day that I posted it, which has been 3 months since then.
Yeah.
And literally the same day that I posted it, got a notification. Oh, there's a problem. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And so we're still trucking.
Well, we don't have many that go on that long because we do so many that,
Right.
but there's always going to be, and that's why I never promise timeframes. Like when people ask how long does it take, because it's always the person that I'm like, oh, it's only going to take a couple months, and there's that one difficult file
Right.
where the bank's like, no, and it takes 12 months.
But I bet on
Yeah.
Scott, and you could drop this in the comments. There had to have been something else outside of just the short sale process that elongated that, because that's what's happening with mine. I mean,
Right.
before we were talking about this, Nicole was like, "Well, do you need help?" And I'm like, "No, because
Yeah.
it's not the
It's
short
not the
sale.
bank. It's not the
It's not
bank.
the bank. It's
Yeah.
there's fines from the city and the county, and there's permitting issues, and there's all kinds of other issues that are elongating this process. It
Right.
just happens to fall under the title of it's a short sale. So."
Well, I will tell you that a lot of them drag out because of not understanding the process. So, like for example, if you work with a lender like Aquin, if you don't submit everything that they ask, they just shut it down.
Wow.
So that can drag on because you're constantly resubmitting to get the short sale open. So that's definitely a legit concern with, hey, you just don't know what you're doing to get
Right.
it approved. But like you said, in our situation, when it drags out, it's because there's circumstances. Like I had one that is not a case study, but I had one that 3 people died during the process.
Oh, wow.
So the guy that hired me was divorced, and it was under his name, right? The loan was, but he deeded it over to his wife, which don't even get me started on divorces, like making sure that that if you're gonna do that, make sure that they refinance. But anyway, so he was financially responsible, but he had no way of selling the house. So, but she wasn't paying for a year. So long story short, which I guess I'm gonna tell some of the long story, she ended up passing away. So it went to her heirs, right? So he's like, come on, please still help me. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we did an affidavit heirship with the daughter.
Right.
The daughter passes away. And so at this point, you talk about every transaction teaches you something.
Right.
Oh my gosh. We had to get the guardianship because her kids were like 10, 9. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That would took a year. And I'm like, and in that situation, we got it approved from the bank 3 times. So in that situation, it should have been a slam dunk.
Right.
But those are just situations that every situation is different. So you don't know how the outcome's going to be.
So here's my question, and this is me kind of being humorous, but I really want to know, like, who is the master, like, the all-time greatest troll master that named short sales short sales? Like,
Yeah,
where
I know.
did that
It's
come from?
kind of ironic. Well, it's short payoff.
Okay.
So that's
But
why it's
still,
called a short
but for
sale.
everybody, I mean, you see it all the time. It's like, yeah, short sale. You know,
Yeah,
it's
there's
like,
nothing short about it. I wish.
So short payoff is what it stands for.
That's why they named it. It's a short payoff because everyone involved is taking
Is
a
this
loss.
something? Is this something that's been around for a while, or is this? When did this come about?
So when I got in the industry in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working for an REO brokerage, and we were doing 100, 150 foreclosures a month. And at that time, there was only loss mitigation departments because short sales were not a well-known thing. Like people had done loan modifications, but there was no actual short sales. So I guess we'll take a break first and then I can get into it. Was that my cue?
You don't read that screen.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Live TV's awesome. All right,
was
we're
like, "Guys,
going
shut me
to
up."
take a quick break, and this is going to be your last chance for questions for Nicole, and then she's going to finish that story when we come back from commercial. All right, so that was an awesome moment that I get to always make fun of Nicole for. She rapidly cut us through commercial break right in the middle of her story.
Well, what they don't know is I thought that Ryan was trying to shut me up. So.
And now we have neither one of us can remember what the hell we were talking about. So we're just gonna act like the last 4 minutes didn't even happen.
Wait, Ryan, were you paying attention? What was I talking about?
Ryan wasn't paying attention. All right, so we have a question though from
Great,
our people
awesome.
that are paying attention. Matt Smith wants to know, how much discount do you usually get on a short sale?
So that's kind of a big question, right? Because it's hard to answer because certain banks will take a percentage. But remember, it's all based on the as-is value. So that's when we talk about being proactive and starting with that appraisal. Whatever that appraisal comes back at, then if it's like an FHA loan, they'll take 88% of that as-is value. And if it's a conventional, it's just negotiable.
So let me ask you this. When you go to talk to the appraiser and someone like me says, hey, I want the property at 70% of ARV minus repairs.
Right.
Do they pay attention to the fact that I need that percent of spread for my profit, my overhead, everything that comes along with my company? Is that something that they account for?
So no, because we don't do it that way in the sense of like, hey, the investor needs a profit. We more say, hey, look, it's the way we present it, right? Because no one's going to just discount it because like, hey, we need more money.
Right.
So the way we do it to the appraiser is one, try to obviously get the best comps possible, right? If there's any distressed houses already in that neighborhood. But if it's a great neighborhood and just a really crappy house, those are probably the most difficult and most challenging because all he has to compare to are really nice houses. And in that sense, what we do is try to get a crazy amount of bids. I mean, we're working with you, with your contractors, with outside contractors, and we're trying to justify as much as possible to try to get the price down as low as possible. Then that's the starting point. And then when we go to the bank, we get it even lower by negotiating a percentage.
When you have a motivated seller come to you and say, hey, this is my situation, and there's not an investor already involved.
Yeah.
Do you then approach investors to
Yes.
bring them the deal?
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
only titanium investments that
Only
you do
RJ. I only do
That's
that
right.
to RJ on my off-market
Exactly.
properties.
Just wanted to make sure. So if anybody else ever has that happen, make sure you send them back to me because she's messing up. Okay.
It's a mistake.
Yeah, it's clearly a mistake, just like when she read the screen when she wasn't supposed to. John George Alvarez says, you were talking about short payoff and how or whom invented or named the short sell.
Oh, he was paying attention.
He was. That's how.
Good job, John. You know what? John gets a book.
Yeah, John,
gets a book.
you get a book.
You get a
Not
book.
Jamie, because Jamie's clearly
No,
not
Jamie will
paying
still get a
attention.
book because she asked me to sign it. But John, you get a book too. I have another one in my car. So there you go.
There you go. Thank you, John. So he asked, does that help? Does that help?
It does help, John. Thanks for keeping us on
The
track.
only thing that would have made that comment better is he's like, does that help? Comma, morons, question mark. Don't even know what you're talking about. So let's get back to that story. I mean, so you were talking about, some of the situations that you've gone through. I think Ryan wanted us to talk about what is the absolute craziest short sell that you've had to deal with?
Okay, so I'm gonna say craziest from like my perspective and not like the lender because I still have like nightmares about this house. So the more you do these investment properties, you're just immune to it, right? Like it doesn't faze you like what you see. And I think the worst house that I've been to, that this lady was behind for 9 years.
Wow.
9 years. And she came to us and literally the lender was like, not the lender, the court, because she kept filing bankruptcy. The court was literally told her, we're not giving you any more bankruptcy or doing anything. The judge was like, you either sell the house or get out. Like just ruthless.
Right.
So we go to the house and I always tell
Are you representing her?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Not in this, only afterwards. Afterwards, she got to the point where she's like, okay, I guess I have to sell because I can't, live here anymore for free. So I always tell people that the scariest homeowners the ones that I know the scariest houses are going to be are the ones that are really vague. And I don't know if you see this trend, but like that I'm like, hey, so what's wrong with the house? Oh, just a couple of repairs.
Right.
And I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Crap. The ones that are really specific, like, oh, I got to replace this, I got to do
Right.
that, it's not as scary. So anyways, so I show up to this house and it was the most, it was one of those that like hits you in the face. There was 3 dead cats. One was in her bed
Oh.
Okay, and we don't talk about it according to her, because when we walked in, she was like, that's, I can't even remember the name because I don't think I was paying attention. But she's like, we don't do Garfield. She's like, we don't talk about Garfield. She's like, but she died a couple months ago and I can't bury her. And she's like literally in the bed that she sleeps in. And so I'm walking through and honestly, I don't even know if I got all the paperwork signed, because I think I was just like, here,
Right.
sign here, whatever. But like going through the entire house was probably the most disturbing thing that, I mean, it was like, I can't even begin to explain to you. She gave me booties to put on to walk through the house. Like, I'm not kidding, but I didn't care. I mean, I threw away my boots as soon as I left. But
what about Travion gave us like a full-on awe about the booties?
He's like, oh, she's so
oh,
sweet.
that's so sweet.
That she knew how bad it was.
She's sleeping with a dead cat, bro. Like, this is not a sweet story,
but she had 3 liens in that house, and it's actually really sad too, because her dad had died.
Yeah.
But her dad had died like in the house too, so you could see where his stuff was.
She buried him, right?
She probably buried him
Okay,
in
just
the
make
backyard.
sure he wasn't also
But I don't
in
know.
the
It was
bed.
probably like in the backyard, like. And so the investor that brought it to me was just laughing so hard, because like he's kind of rude because he didn't warn me.
Wait, you don't work with other investors, so I don't know.
Yeah,
where
it
story
was way
went.
before I met RJ.
The story just got skewed.
And then I showed up, and afterwards I was like, "Have you been inside this house?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like,
Wow, he didn't even warn you?
No, we don't talk anymore. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
I was about to be like, man, that is.
So that was the craziest, because the lenders were wanting full retail price for that one, and I was like, "Look, I wish I could send you this, even the smell in itself, so you guys could understand. It should have been a slam dunk, because hoarders. I mean, she was also a hoarder.
Right.
So there was like 30,000 water bottles and 30,000 things. And there's like this little trail to walk into the house, because that's where she walks every
Right.
single day. And so it was not hard to prove to the lender that this was, I mean, honestly, we should have just destroyed it. I don't even know
Right.
what the investor was thinking. Like, he should have just demolished it at that point.
So, John already won a book, so he's super excited that we just gave him a second book.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure John's wondering if we're even paying attention to what's happening for the past hour.
Am I mad?
Sorry, John.
Well, you're definitely getting it, though.
Yeah, you'll get one that's autographed so you can frame it, and one that's not autographed so you can read it.
Sure.
That's what we'll do.
Okay.
So, you brought me a deal in the Colony.
Yeah.
That we flipped, and it was kind of a similar situation with the hoarder situation.
Oh no, hers was clean compared to
Yeah,
this
but
one.
I mean, it was still she
definitely was a hoarder,
She
yeah.
had hoarder tendencies.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with someone like that is financially distressed, they've distressed a property like that, what are some of the tips that you can give people that watch this that maybe are a little bit newer, where you kind of have to be handled that with a little bit of delicacy?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I think ultimately just making them feel comfortable, and like not, she doesn't need to know that I threw my boots away.
Is it something that you've noticed that they feel uncomfortable at the beginning?
100%. Mostly, they're the ones that will not set the appointments. They're the ones that will drag on and on because they're really embarrassed.
Right.
And so I think understanding that regardless if it's a hoarder or if it's just someone that has a lot of pride because they've been behind for so long, if you come to the appointment from an education standpoint of, let me explain to you how I can help, that value add,
right.
You're going to build rapport so much faster, especially as an investor, because investors do have a bad rep of, they're just trying to, make money off of me or whatever, instead of, hey, I really want to help because you're in this situation. So the biggest tip that I can give to new investors is, come to it from that approach instead of trying to just get them under contract.
Right. Absolutely. So for everybody that's watching, you've definitely given out a ton of great content. If they want to reach out to you, do business with you, contact you, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So you guys, my cell is 972-832-2755, and my email is Nicole, Nicole, is your realtor @gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, Nicole, thank you so much. For people that are interested that didn't win,
for
like
those.
John twice, where can they find your book at?
You can find Short Sale Uncensored on Amazon.
Amazon, and it's awesome. Very quick, easy read. It's not some 300-page beat down about short sales. just jam-packed with quality content and really breaks down the situation. I had already closed multiple deals with Nicole when I bought it, and I probably busted it out in less than an hour, and I came out of it with a ton of information that I didn't really know, even though I've gone through the processes with
Right.
you. Some of the times you just take care of it, and I don't actually know what's happening. So,
Well, I think the biggest thing for the book, and because people always ask me why I wrote it, is so that you can have an understanding, like you're saying, of how do I work with these sellers, because it's a different ballgame.
Right.
Like if you've never worked with a distressed seller as a realtor or an investor, you're not going to understand how to really ask the right questions,
Right.
because that's really the key to this in any situation, or really how to handle it. So that's kind of what the book is about, and it's not boring. So it's very short and
not boring.
sweet. You can kind of hear me talk.
it sounds just like you talking.
It does.
So, all right, guys, that's our show for today. Again, just quick reminder, it is Giving Tuesday. Check out Beat Kids Cancer. Go to my personal page, and you can find the fundraiser that we have going on there today. I set it for $200 this morning. We quickly eclipsed that. I bumped it up to $500, and then right before this, I increased it to $750. So whatever we get from today, we greatly appreciate it. It's directly going to families that are currently undergoing treatment here in DFW, and we're helping them pay their bills. So whatever you guys could do, a quick share, like, or a donation is very much appreciated. That being said, glad that Propelio TV is back this week after Thanksgiving. We'll have Grant Teach Me Something tomorrow. Corey Thompson with Roughneck to Real Estate. We got the Iron Hills ladies, Heels Off on Friday. Quest on Friday, my bad. No Heels Off. Quest on Friday. I'm a terrible host. And but that being said, guys, thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.